One of the biggest fears most homeowners have when they're talking about doing an addition, a remodel, an ADU, anything of that nature, is that the cost is going to climb higher than what they expected. And understandably so. We see it on all the movies and the TV shows, the reality shows. It happens almost every time, it seems like, in those shows for some reason. It does not happen with us, but it does unfortunately happen in the real world to real people with real projects. And so what I want to do today is educate you, the homeowner, on reading construction contracts. A lot of those horror stories I hear, had the homeowner been more educated at the beginning, they could have avoided the entire fiasco. So today we're going to go through the difference between a cost plus contract and a fixed cost contract, and then we're going to break down a bunch of key contract terms so that you will have as much information as possible when talking to builders, hopefully us, but if you live in a different area, whoever you're talking to, all of these things will apply, and it will give you a lot better basic understanding of what the true cost of your project is going to be. Hey folks, welcome back. I'm Josh Kogler with Rockin General Contracting, and today we're going to be learning about how to read construction contracts. So obviously, as I'm sure you can imagine, one of the biggest pain points in home renovation, remodeling, new construction, whatever it is going to be surrounding the financial side of things. And so I'm a firm believer that if homeowners have a better idea up front what that contract means, what type and structure it is, what the nomenclature is, if they can educate themselves on those things, they'll have a much clearer picture in their mind, and that will set them up for a much higher percentage of success. So that's what we're going to be doing today. We're going to start by talking about the two major categories, the two major structures of contract, and that is cost plus as well as fixed cost. Now, those two are going to make up probably 95% of the types of contracts that we see, and I'm sure there's some outliers. There's all kinds of nuance within each, so it's really important that you ask a builder all kinds of questions. Just because they say cost plus or just because they say fixed cost, there's all kinds of nuances. So we're going to try to cover as much of that as we can today, and at least be a good 30,000 foot perspective and a good jumping off point for you. So we'll start off on the cost plus side. I would say overall cost plus, there's pros and cons to both of them, but I would say cost plus definitely puts more risk on the homeowner. I would say it's got a lot greater price variability. The way it works essentially is much like the name sounds, is that you pay the cost to subcontractors, to material suppliers, to all those things, plus the fee to the builder. And so if I'm a builder doing a cost plus job, I have the foundation crew come out, let's say they charge $40,000 for the foundation, the cost plus fees 20%, I send the homeowner an invoice with the $40,000 from the subcontractor, as well as the additional $8,000 that makes up the 20% of the builder fee. The good part about that is it's extremely transparent, so you see exactly what every subcontractor and material supplier are costing on the job on a real level. The downside is that you've got that price variability. And so some ways that you can protect yourself from that are to ask for a not to exceed contract. A lot of builders will agree to that, which is basically saying, okay, their original estimate is $500,000, but they're willing to sign a not to exceed contract of $550,000. It's a 10% contingency. They're saying we can keep within 10% of our numbers. That would be a suitable outcome in my opinion. I'd feel comfortable with that then as a homeowner. What I wouldn't want is just a strictly cost plus with no upper limit. I want an upper limit. The fact of the matter is, I would imagine a lot of you guys are like myself, and the amount of money I have is finite. I don't have a money printer, so I've got a certain amount that I'm able to spend on whatever project I'm doing, and I want to make sure we don't go beyond that. So if we are going to go with a cost plus contract, I would even more than normal, I would put a heavier emphasis on a very experienced builder. So I would not want to trust someone on a cost plus model, particularly if you don't have that not to exceed or that upper bound, unless they've been doing this. There's a lot of builders, it's a really common practice. A lot of even high-end new home builders are running a cost plus model, and they've been doing it for a decade, and they're really good at it, and their customers love it. So I'm not saying you've got to avoid it at all costs, but I would not want someone that's in their second year of owning a construction company to run under this model. There's far too much risk to the homeowner. And so what I would be looking for is a minimum of 5 years experience, and I'd be looking for relevant experience. So if they do cost plus, but 98% of their projects are backyard decks, and you're looking at doing an addition to your home with a second story ADU over the top of it, that doesn't count as experienced in my opinion. It's gotta be similar or greater scope. Now, if they do the additions, I'd say they're pretty capable of doing the decks, but it can't go the other way. So comparable or bigger scope, and having lots of experience, having some testimonials, having referrals, all those things would go a long way in alleviating some of my concerns about cost plus. Some of the positives is it does have more flexible scope. So if you've watched my videos, you know that I harp on planning in the beginning. With cost plus, it's not as necessary from the builder's perspective, and some people prefer that. They want to see the shell framed up before they decide the layout of all the closets. To me, it drives me crazy. I'd rather plan it up front, and I just know how much money it saves. If we get that plan right in the beginning, it's so much more efficient and therefore affordable for the homeowner to build the same thing. So those are the main positives from the cost plus is the transparency, as well as a little more flexible scope, a little more autonomy for the homeowners over the project. All right, so now we've got our heads wrapped around cost plus. We're going to go ahead and dive into fixed cost and allowances. So as an overview, fixed cost is just like it sounds. It's a fixed amount. And so we still are going to break it down line item by line item, stage by stage, everything from excavation through finishes, where you're going to have a different price for, and you're going to see those, but those are going to be fixed. That's going to be my guarantee that we're going to build it for that price. Allowances are only things that you as the homeowner have control over. So these are going to be all our selections essentially. So a real common allowance, if we're doing, we have basically 3 tiers of projects that we do. And so we have our luxury, our economy, and then our Goldilocks in the middle. Let's say we're doing a Goldilocks kitchen. We're going to need an allowance for the countertops, because depending on whether you pick out granite, quartzite, quartz, concrete, there's going to be slight fluctuations even in the different colors and patterns and everything else. So I can't give a price up front for that, because I need you to select the finishing. And so I want to make sure we put a budget number in that fixed cost. I don't want to say, here's your fixed cost plus you need to think about these 19 other things. So I want you to have that total number. And so we've got a full budget of how much money you need to be able to afford and justify the project we're going to perform. And then once you pick those things, we're going to reconcile back to those allowances. So in the case of the Goldilocks kitchen, a $6,000 allowance per slab. Let's say your kitchen is going to require 2 slabs. You go out and find a slab that includes fabrication and install at $5,000 instead of $6,000. Well, times 2 slabs, you get $2,000 taken off that total price. Conversely, if you find nicer ones that you really like, you want to have it, but they're $7,000 per slab, you've got to pay $2,000 extra. And so we try to set those allowances extremely fair from the beginning so that there are multiple options in that price point that you can get, and that total number will not go up unless you decide to go crazy on the selections. The only other thing that can change our budget is scope. And so scope means that, let's say we were planning to do your kitchen as well as a master bath. And we get in, we start doing, you're like, you know what, we just want to do the common bath as well. Right now, you guys are here, let's get it done. Well, that's obviously going to cost more money because we're adding scope. Now, scope is not, we thought we'd be able to reuse more of the flooring. That's my fault as the builder. And so that's what I like about a true fixed cost. And again, there's nuances with all builders and how they do it. So you want to ask all these questions, but for us, the only way you get a change order is if you increase the scope. And so that's what I think is my job as the builder. I'm the expert, I'm the professional in the relationship. And so if I didn't count for enough 2x4s, that's on me, that's my fault. And so we got to get the project done for the price. We've got to deliver the product we promised to deliver for the price we promised to deliver it. And so with the fixed cost, that's really the only way you're going to get that, in my opinion. So regardless of whether the contractor, the builder is calling it fixed cost or cost plus, these are some key contract terms that you still really want to dive into and make certain you have 100% understanding of how that contract works. So change orders. We need to know what can trigger a change order, who's responsible, because at my company, at Rockin General Contracting, the only way you get a change order is if you increase scope. You say, you know what, we weren't going to heat the tile floor in the master bath, but now we're kind of thinking about it. We got a nice tax refund, whatever. How much would that cost? You send me a request. I send you how much that would cost, and then you approve or decline that before any work is done. If you hit decline, cost didn't change at all whatsoever. So that's the kind of protection you get working with us. You want to make sure, if you're working with somebody else, wherever you are, you want to make sure you have a complete understanding of what can trigger a change order. Not to exceed. So this is most pertinent to the cost plus model. With a fixed cost, you've already said that you're not going to exceed that. So that one really applies to the cost plus. If I was getting a cost plus, I want some upper limit. I want some promise, some guarantee that I'm going to be able to afford it. So allowances, we went through that pretty well under the fixed cost model. And then scope and inclusions. Here's a thing that varies wildly from builder to builder. So again, with my model, I'm trying to include everything. I'm trying to reduce as much stress as possible for my customers. With some builders, there's a lot of other things that aren't included. And so you want to have a really clear understanding of what's included. If you're building an addition and they say paint the outside, are they painting the outside of the addition or the outside of the entire home? So those things really got to be pinned down up front, because otherwise there'll be arguments later if the builder had one idea and the homeowner had another. So you've got to have that clear scope and inclusions. And another really important thing where I see hiccups happen is in a payment schedule. You want to know what the builder's payment schedule is. So for us at Rockin, when we're working on a big scale project, we're billing every other week. And that way there's just a cadence, there's a regularity. We have our meetings with our project manager every 2 weeks. So you're getting the bill, and then 3 days later you're meeting with the project manager so you can go over that bill well before the due date. You want to know what that process is. If they don't have a process, that's a big red flag to me. What I typically see with subcontractors or even GCs that don't have a process is inevitably at some point in the project, they're running around like a chicken with their head cut off on a Wednesday saying they got to be paid by Thursday. You want to avoid that. Some of the invoices on these bigger scale projects can be well north of $50,000. So for me, I don't keep that kind of money in a checking account. I don't think that's prudent. And so typically there's transfers, sometimes it's construction loans, whatever it is that needs to happen come from money market funds. Whatever it is usually takes a few days for the bank to get it done. And so you want to make sure that you don't have a stressed out contractor showing up at your doorstep saying he's got to get paid that day or he can't pay his bills. So I would look for that payment schedule. I'd want to be really clear on what it was and know when it's coming. And if everyone's on the same page of that, they know how it works. I don't have any issues at all with payments and my customers because they're aware up front. They know the timeline and the deadline. They know the cadence. It's easy peasy. Whatever, they can come in a lot of different shapes and forms. That's just how we do it. But they better do it a particular way and stick to it. And you better know what that way is and be really comfortable before you go into the project. So folks, I really hope that at least helps to start to demystify the process of getting into a big, huge contract with a builder on a large scale construction, renovation, new build, whatever it is. I hope that you've at least got a decent understanding now of some of the key terms that we really want to be able to define, the two major category types of different contracts, and some of the common pitfalls that I see folks make. So if there's anything you feel like I didn't cover, anything that's still a little too wishy-washy for you, please feel free to leave questions down below. If you got questions on anything else to do related to construction, whether it's current projects you're working on, things you're thinking about in the near or even distant future, please feel free to leave those below, and we will get to as many as we can and try to be a great resource for you. If you've got some other questions on how to select the perfect builder for you and for your project, we did already make a video on that, and you can check that one out right here.